Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Titta, and today I'm going to present some of my results on my second data gathering. Like Jere said, I also focus on iron metabolism, but since those are yet to be studied or analyzed, today we're just going to look at what we found in performance. But yeah, many endurance athletes, they use different forms of hypoxia training to improve sea level and altitude performance. And when we go to the altitude, there are many effects on acute effects on performance. Mainly, studies are focused on looking at the maximal performance. VO2 max, it increases, and the decrease goes even higher when we go higher in the altitude. And also decreases occur in exercise capacity, time trial performance, and time to exhaustion. But also there are reductions in submaximal performance, and in this one study, they found that the impact of hypoxia was even higher or larger on the performance in lactate threshold than in the maximal performance. And there is large variation in these acute effects, and two possible explanatory mechanisms are maybe or explanation for this is training status and sex. And about the training status, it's been shown that in higher level athletes, the reductions in performance may be even higher. Greater reduction in VO2. When you have higher VO2 max, it might lead to higher reduction in your VO2 max in altitude. Even though in this one study they found that at rested state, the athletes were better I can't say that word. They were better settled there, but compared to like untrained individuals. But then, like during the exercise, the difference was still there. And also during submaximal performance, there's also seen that in higher level athletes, there's greater reduction in performance. And possibly one explanatory mechanism for this is the oxygen saturation, and they saw that like the ability to maintain oxyhemoglobin, so higher SpO2, led to smaller reduction in VO2, and this was especially seen in endurance higher level of athletes. The effect of sex, well, most studies, as in many fields, are mostly done with males, so there's not too much information, but there are actually a few studies that are review articles that have viewed differences between males and females. There are differences in ventilatory responses, so female might have lower oxygen saturation, possibly because they have lower lung volumes and different kind of diffusion capacity. And during exercise, even in normoxia, females might have higher exercise-induced hypoxemia, and therefore during submaximal or exercise in hypoxia, the effects of oxygen saturation may be higher. Also some cardiovascular response changes, so women may have higher heart rate when going to the altitude acutely and higher blood pressure. And some changes might also be, or differences in substrate metabolism, at least in normoxia, women tend to have higher fat oxidations, while male more so rely on carbohydrate oxidation and amino acids. But yeah, currently the recommendations suggest that when we go to altitude, you should lower the intensity. But however, most of the studies that have looked at the performance in high altitude, they have looked at it at the maximal level. What is the effect on maximal performance? And then there are not too many studies looking at the differences between sex and training status. And to maintain lower intensity exercise, it's good to monitor training. And usually athletes, they mostly look at the heart rate. But actually in research, both reduced and unchanged heart rate has been seen in the same relative intensity. And in most studies, these like aerobic and anaerobic zones and heart rate zones, they've been determined in a VO2 max test that have been done both in hypoxia. And when, like in practice, maybe not too many athletes, they actually are able to do a VO2 max test in hypoxia to give them like separate thresholds where to train. when they go to the altitude. So the aim of my study, or what I'm showing here in these results, is to investigate the effect of acute hypoxic exercise on submaximal performance in aerobic and anaerobic thresholds in endurance athletes. And we wanted to see whether heart rate guided training would be sufficient to monitor exercise intensity in acute hypoxia, and if there's any effect on sex or training status to the performance. We had quite a nice number of participants. It was fun to do that for a change. Got 42, of which 22 for females and 20 for males. But there was quite a big difference in their training level, so we also divided these into 2 groups. So we combined tier 3 to 4 athletes that were highly trained to international level, and then we had recreationally active to trained athletes. And the protocol, so first we did the pre-measurements. We did a VO2 max test by running on a treadmill. And from that, we looked at what is the anaerobic and aerobic threshold and looked what was the heart rate there. Then there was a 2 to 4 day break, after which we did 2 interval exercises. I'm going to show you the protocol soon. But the other one was done in normoxia and the other one in hypoxia. And for both of these, we used this hypoxic generator that was set either to sea level or to 2,000 meters. And it was single blinded, so the athletes, they didn't know in which exercise they were coming. And also we did them in random order, which was actually good because I felt like we were able to trick quite many people because everyone just felt that the first exercise was harder because it was just like getting used to breathing with the machines. Yeah, and because I'm looking at the iron markers later, we also took blood samples there, but we're not gonna look at them today. The interval exercise, it included a 10-minute warm-up. Then we did 2 times 4 minutes on aerobic threshold and 5 times 4 minutes in anaerobic threshold. And from these, aim was that we had the same heart rate for both of the interval sessions. And we looked what were the changes in speed, rated perceived exertion, then SpO2 taken from fingertip, and lactate we took only 3 times after the second aerobic threshold interval, and then after the second and fourth anaerobic threshold interval. Yeah. And then just explaining first this graph. So women, they are on the left side on orange, and blue ones are males. And then the darker colors are tier 3 to 4 athletes. Lighter colors are tier 1 to 2, so the lower level athletes. And then the solid line is in normoxia and dashed line is hypoxia. So we saw that the running speed was reduced for all the groups in hypoxia, and kind of what was expected, that males they ran a little bit faster than females, and tier 3 to 4 athletes, they ran faster than tier 1 to 2. But this is now the change that happened coming from normoxia to hypoxia. There were no difference in the reduction in running speed between with sex or training status. And these are all the individual, the squares and circles are individual athletes. So you can see that there is quite a big variation there, but not significant hypoxia-induced changes in those categories. Then for the lactate, even though the heart rate was the same as speed was reduced, we can see that the lactate, it was significantly, so the dashed lines for all the groups, they were higher in hypoxia. And I guess what was a little bit different is that in normoxia, when we did the exercise, there were no difference during the anaerobic threshold intervals. The lactate is stabilized quite nicely, but then in hypoxia, the lactate increased during the exercise. And otherwise, in absolute changes, there were no differences, but in tier 1 to 2, so the lower level athletes, in males, they had higher lactates compared to men, but other differences did not exist. And again, same for the change in hypoxia, so the percentage change in lactate. They didn't differ between sex or training status. I guess only like in the mean, even though there was no significant, in the mean you can see that males in the aerobic threshold interval, they had in hypoxia even the lower lactate, but then again it can be also just variation like daily, because it was like a little bit over 1 millimole what the lactate was, and of course the speeds were also a little bit reduced there, but not significant, and by the end of the exercise it was similar change between every group. Then the RPE, so even though lactate was higher and speed was reduced, basically nothing happened in how the athletes felt about the exercise. It was really similar between conditions and between all groups. And no changes also between conditions with sex or training status. Here again, even though not significant, I think it was interesting to see that the solid bars are the higher level athletes. So with the easier speeds, so warm up and the aerobic threshold intervals, the feeling of the exercise intensity was actually lower for the higher level athletes. But when going to the higher speeds, then the exercise felt a little bit more exhausting, but quite similar still. And again, really large variations between individuals. And finally, the oxygen saturation. So it was quite a bit reduced in hypoxia. And different from the previous research, it was actually lower in males than females. And one explanation could be that because we were using these machines and the intensities were pretty high. And I feel like, well, hearing as a person who did the measurements, I felt that men also felt a bit harder to breathe with things, but of course they also have higher lung volumes and it might have restricted the ventilation more and therefore maybe led to lower oxygen saturation levels as well. But the changes between individuals, again, or changes between these groups, they did not differ. Yeah, and the effect of hypoxia, again, it was the same between sex and training status. But yeah, with these results, I would say that heart rate guided training may lead to increased training load in moderate hypoxia. And the difference was higher when we went to higher intensities. But there is a large individual variation that should be considered. But maybe monitoring of lactate and RPE would be good for the athlete. And the hypoxia-induced changes in speed, lactate, oxygen saturation, or RPE data did not differ between sex or training status. And these differ a little bit from the previous studies, but we also had like a lower altitude level. So maybe this is one explanatory mechanism for this too. Yeah, but yeah, thank you. And we have time for questions.